The story begins at the Olympics, where an announcer marvels at a historic victory. 4 Japanese women have captured the gold, earning the nickname Olympic Goddesses. Remarkably, they all originated from the same high school. When asked about the key to their success, one of the athletes attributes it simply to living their lives to the fullest. The narrative shifts to the past at Itadaki Private Academy. A new student, Ryu Kominato, stands before the massive campus, struggling to believe he is actually enrolling. Suddenly, someone bumps into him from behind, apologizing profusely for splashing water on his bag. The girl immediately offers to pay for the damage, casually asking if 50,000 yen would suffice, though she notes she doesn't carry coins. Confused by her false sense of value, Ryu explains he bought the bag on eBay for a mere 500 yen. The girl is shocked by the low price, but he dismisses the issue, refusing to take money for nothing. As she walks away, casually discussing eBay with her friends, he becomes acutely aware of how little he belongs in their world of wealth. A flashback takes us 3 months earlier. In the Kominato household, 2 sisters complain about their hunger while Ryu cooks in the kitchen. He retorts that their constant complaining won't make the food cook faster. Despite calling him stubborn, arrogant, and unsociable, the sisters devour the meal once it is served. They praise his ability to turn cheap ingredients into a multi-course masterpiece, dubbing him the family's exclusive chef. Their meal is interrupted by a letter from their father, a traveler who rarely sends money. One sister opens it to find special enrollment papers for Itadaki Academy. The condition for acceptance is unique. Ryu must work as a dorm cook to refine his palate. Initially, he rejects the idea, planning to work at a factory to support the family. However, his sister urges him to go, revealing that they always knew he wanted to be a chef based on his daily food research. She insists he pursue his passion, assuring him that the family will manage without him. So, he finally arrives at the academy. Standing outside, Ryu reflects on the prestigious nature of the academy, known for producing Olympic-caliber athletes. He realizes that his father's connections were more significant than he thought. Although he has no interest in sports, he understands the weight of his new responsibility, keeping these elite athletes in top physical condition through his cooking. Ryu studies the guide map, determined not to let the sheer size of the academy defeat him. However, 30 minutes later, he is hopelessly lost and unable to locate the dorms. Smelling the faint scent of chlorine, he wanders into a nearby building, hoping to find someone to ask for directions. Inside the facility, Ryu looks up to see a figure doing a handstand on the high diving platform. Panic sets in as he mistakes the athlete's focus for a suicide attempt, but before he can react, the girl jumps, executing a perfect 360-degree twist before slicing into the water. He rushes to the poolside, frantically asking if she is okay. The swimmer climbs out and approaches him, questioning if he is unfamiliar with the sport. Ryu realizes admitting his ignorance on the first day might look bad for a staff member. He lies, claiming he knows the sport well, and attempts to compliment her by giving the dive a 10 out of 10 because the splash was massive enough to reach him. The girl scowls, offended by the remark. She points out that in diving, a large splash is a sign of failure, not success. Realizing he has inadvertently insulted her, Ryu awkwardly shifts the conversation to ask for the dorm's location. She curtly directs him to turn right at the end of the pathway before diving back into the water. Walking away, Ryu cannot shake the feeling that he has seen her before. It suddenly strikes him. She is Ichino's, the famous Olympic swimmer his sisters were discussing. He is awestruck, realizing that professional athletes truly do attend this school. Finally arriving at the dorm, he rings the bell. A male student, Takahashi, opens the door. Ryu introduces himself as the new support staff, but Takahashi looks confused, claiming he hasn't heard anything about it. Suddenly, another girl appears behind Takahashi, thanking him for a drink as she spilled hers earlier. Ryu observes the gal, noting that while she's wearing a sports uniform, she appears a bit flashy compared to the others. She pauses, looking at Ryu with curiosity. He clarifies the situation, explaining that he is Ryu Kominato, the new dorm kitchen manager who got lost on his way. The girl leans in uncomfortably close, staring into his eyes, before realizing he must be looking for the other dorm. She offers to guide him there personally. Takahashi voices his jealousy that the two of them will be alone together, but she ignores his complaints and drags Ryu away. As they walk, she comments on how late in the year he is enrolling. Ryu offers a vague explanation about special circumstances, but internally, he questions her appearance. With her heavy makeup, long nails, and earrings, she looks nothing like an athlete. She tries to ask him a question but accidentally squeezes her water bottle too hard, splashing water everywhere. Ryu offers her a cloth to dry off, but she teases him. When he recoils in shock, she laughs, telling him that despite his sharp eyes, he is surprisingly innocent. Upon reaching the correct dorm, she asks for his room number so she can come over. As she departs, Ryu realizes she is wearing a judo uniform. He is baffled, contrasting her flashy, rebellious style with the neat, serious image of famous judo stars like Yawara-chan. Deciding to ignore the contradiction and focus on his job, he enters the building. Inside, Ryu is awestruck by the lavish interior, which resembles a noble mansion, a sight he wishes he could show his sisters. He wanders down the hallway and opens a door, expecting a common area. Instead, he finds a girl in the middle of changing clothes. Panic sets in. Ryu slams the door shut and attempts to flee, shouting that he didn't see anything. The girl bursts out of the room, furious that he is trying to run away without apologizing. She chases him down and grabs his coat, screaming that he has ruined her chances of marriage. Despite the chaos of being called a pervert, Ryu finds himself captivated by her face, noting that her soft eyes and long eyelashes make her look almost like a living doll. The girl shouts, demanding to know where he is looking, and punches Ryu squarely in the face. Strangely, she immediately follows the assault by clapping her hands. Ryu, now sprawled on the ground, is baffled by her strength and the odd gesture. She explains nonchalantly that it is muscle memory. At her family home, servants usually appear whenever she claps. Ryu suddenly recognizes her. She is Himari Natsuki, a famous tennis player and the daughter of a high-ranking director. Panic sets in as he realizes the gravity of the situation. If a national idol accuses him of peeping, he will be branded a pervert, his reputation destroyed, and his culinary dreams ended on the spot. Deciding that flight is his only option, he scrambles up and runs. Himari declares that running away is an admission of guilt. She produces a tennis racket and serves a ball at him with terrifying velocity. Ryu barely dodges the projectile but loses his footing, tumbling down a flight of stairs. Desperate to hide, he turns a corner and accidentally collides with another student. Startled, the new girl instinctively performs a high-flying 360-degree flip, landing with a bright smile. Impressed by her flexibility, Ryu claps. The girl, Kaou, is delighted by the applause and suddenly hugs him to show her appreciation. Ryu struggles to break free, realizing she must be from a famous gymnastics family. Just then, Himari catches up and witnesses the embrace. It seems like Ryu is up to no good again in her eyes. She shouts out to Kaou, checking if she's all good. Ryu tries to explain, but Kaoru's attitude flips instantly. She declares that if he is a pervert, she will arrest him herself. When Ryu points out that she was happy about the applause just seconds ago, Kaou coldly states that Himari's orders are absolute. Ryu breaks free and sprints away again, lamenting his terrible luck. In his haste, he crashes into yet another girl. It is Ichino, the swimmer from the pool. She scolds everyone for the noise and then recognizes Ryu as the guy who insulted her earlier. Cornered, he begs them to listen. He explains that he was hired to manage the dorm kitchen and asks to speak to the person in charge to clear up the misunderstanding. Himari crosses her arms and delivers a crushing blow to his defense. She refuses to believe him because this is a girls-only dorm. Ryu freezes, completely stunned by the revelation. Ryu attempts to deny the absurdity of the situation, but Himari snatches the letter from his hands to verify the contents herself. She reads aloud that Ryu Kominato is indeed invited with a full tuition waiver, on the condition that he serves as the dorm cook. However, she highlights the critical issue. He has been assigned to reside in the second dormitory, which is strictly for girls. The other residents gather around, whispering that this must be a mistake, though one notes that the board chairman is eccentric enough to authorize such a move. Ryu realizes the gravity of his predicament. If these girls reject him, his acceptance letter and scholarship are gone. He desperately pleads his case, shouting that he won't intrude on their privacy and is accustomed to living with women because of his sisters. Himari immediately shuts him down. She argues that even if he is comfortable, they are not. They dress casually and share a living space. Living with a male is impossible. Furthermore, as athletes aiming for the Olympics, they cannot afford the distraction of living with someone they consider a pervert. The elite group of first-year students stands united against him. Himari Natsuki, a 15-year-old tennis prodigy, Kaoru Moroha, a gymnast, Kyouko Kanzaki, a judo specialist, and Yuzuki Ichinose, a competitive swimmer. Defeated, Ryu clenches his teeth. Suddenly, a small scrap of paper flutters out of the envelope. It reads simply, "Good luck from Dad." Ryu boils with rage, realizing his father created this entire chaotic setup. The narrative briefly flashes forward to the Olympic interview seen at the beginning of the story. The announcer asks the gold medalist for the secret to her success. She attributes it to living life to the fullest and the friendly rivalry among her dorm mates. However, she emphasizes that the biggest factor was a special person, the one who cooked them delicious food. Returning to the present, Ryu has no idea of the success that awaits him in the future. Standing in the hallway, he curses his father and dreads the seemingly impossible task of winning over these girls and surviving the next 3 years. Ryu stands alone in the kitchen, sighing at the absurdity of his situation. He secured a spot at this prestigious academy through his father's connections on the condition that he works as a dorm cook, only to discover he has been assigned to a girls-only dormitory. The residents have already tried to kick him out, threatening to revoke his semi-invitation and end his academic career before it begins. Reflecting on the confrontation earlier, Ryu remembers begging them for a chance. Himari had threatened to contact the chairman immediately to have him removed. Desperate to protect his pride and his enrollment, Ryu stopped her, arguing that it would be unfair to dismiss him without even tasting his food. Himari, challenging his confidence, agreed to a wager. He has one chance to prove his worth. If he fails, he leaves. Back in the present, Ryu racks his brain for a dish that will win them over. He needs something that will force them to drop their guards. Flipping through a cookbook, he lands on an idea that he believes is foolproof. After finishing the preparations, Ryu gets on the PA system. He boldly announces that the meal is ready, bragging slightly about the quality of his work and inviting them to the dining hall if they want to eat good food. The girls head toward the dining room, skeptical of his confidence. They whisper among themselves, suspecting that those who brag the loudest usually have the least ability. However, when they enter the hall, they are silenced by the sight before them. Ryu stands proudly next to a magnificent, intricate 4-tiered cake. He beams, asking for their thoughts and explaining that he went all out to create a celebratory feast where they can eat as much as they want. He urges them to dig in, confident that his confectionery skills will win them over. To his shock, Himari refuses to touch it. She admits that she is surprised an amateur could create something so visually impressive, but she flatly states she will not eat it. Ryu looks around, confused, only to see the others standing still. He asks if they hate sweets that much. Kyouko apologizes, saying she wants to support him, but even she cannot eat this. Kaoru delivers the final blow, suggesting that perhaps he just isn't cut out for this job. One by one, the girls turn and head for the exit, leaving the cake untouched. Himari glances back, mocking him by saying that his so-called pride clearly only amounts to this tone-deaf display. He is left alone in the silent dining hall, completely confused. He takes pride in his creations, yet the girls refuse to even taste the cake. He feels a sinking suspicion that just by looking at the food, they understood something fundamental that he failed to grasp. Later, Ryu sits dejectedly outside the dorm with his bags packed. Passing students gossip loudly about him, mocking the self-proclaimed chef who got himself fired on the first day. The words sting, sending Ryu into a spiral of self-pity. He feels like an idiot for squandering such a massive opportunity and dreads facing his sisters, who supported him so blindly. A flashback reveals why this failure hurts so much. Ryu remembers his sisters coming home exhausted from work. When he cooked for them, the food was so delicious they couldn't stop bragging about it, calling his cooking magic and dubbing him their personal 3-star chef. That joy is why he fell in love with cooking in the first place. Back in the present, the memory reignites his resolve. He clenches his fists, deciding it is still too early to give up. As he stands up with renewed determination, Yuzuki Ichino walks by, noticing the strange fire in his eyes. The next day, Himari is on the tennis court practicing her killing smash, a move so powerful it frightens the other students. Nearby, Ichino tries to focus on her own practice and forget the awkward events of the previous day, but she spots Ryu clinging to the chain-link fence, furiously taking notes. She sprints over and demands to know what he is doing. Ryu, focused entirely on his data collection, tells her not to mind him and immediately moves on to the next location. He spends the entire day observing the girls' routines. He watches them run, grapple, and jump, taking detailed notes on everything. He finally understands the reality of their living conditions. These athletes undergo grueling workouts that burn an immense amount of calories. They need to balance energy replenishment with body maintenance. For sports relying on speed, staying light is crucial, but they also need to build specific muscle groups. He realizes that his 4-tiered cake was a mistake. They didn't need empty calories. They needed a menu engineered for performance. Exhausted from walking around the massive campus all day, Ryu collapses onto a bench to catch his breath. Suddenly, a water bottle is thrust in front of him. He turns around to see Himari standing there, looking down at him. Ryu stares at the offered bottle, jokingly asking if she plans to poison him. Himari rolls her eyes, explaining that he hasn't eaten anything but cake recently. Since he has been walking around the massive campus all day, burning energy, she doesn't want him collapsing before he has the chance to pack up and leave. Taking the drink, he offers a sincere apology. He admits he was wrong to serve a calorie-dense cake the day before, realizing now that their refusal wasn't personal, it was professional discipline. Himari sighs, admitting that there isn't a girl alive who doesn't love cake. However, they suppress those cravings to achieve results. She reveals her burning frustration whenever she sees someone better than her, declaring she will do whatever it takes to reach the Olympics. Awestruck by her dedication, Ryu tells her she is cool. He shares his own history, explaining how he dedicated his life to cooking but almost gave up due to family circumstances. He begs her for one last chance to prove his worth as a chef. Seeing his genuine passion, Himari softens her stance and agrees. Later, Ryu's voice echoes over the dorm speakers, inviting everyone to the dining hall. Kyouko groans, annoyed that he is trying to stroke his ego again, and asks who authorized this. Kaoru looks at Himari, who admits she allowed it because he seemed genuinely sorry, though she remains skeptical. When the girls arrive, they find, yet again, a cake. Himari is furious. She marches up to Ryu, accusing him of learning absolutely nothing. She berates him for having the nerve to tempt them with junk food twice, calling him terrible for disregarding their efforts. He smiles calmly, asking if she isn't jumping the gun. Provoked by his confidence, Himari grabs a spoon. She declares she will take one bite just to shut him up and end this chaos so she can return to her training. She shoves a scoop of cake into her mouth and freezes. It is delicious, a sweetness she has denied herself for far too long. However, something is wrong. Despite the rich flavor, the cake feels incredibly light. It lacks the heavy, greasy sensation of traditional sweets. Confused, she looks at Ryu, who approaches with a confident smirk. He hands her a sheet of paper listing the ingredients. Himari reads it in disbelief. It is a specially crafted low-calorie cake. Comparing the nutritional value to a regular cake, the difference is night and day. She looks up at him, stunned, and asks how on earth he managed to create this. Ryu explains that he utilized every calorie-cutting measure he could find to create a cake they can eat over and over without worrying about their weight. Himari is incredulous, asking where he learned to manipulate ingredients like that. Ryu reveals that he spent years cooking for very nitpicking people, his sisters, who demanded high-quality food without the weight gain. Through endless experimentation, he mastered the art of keeping calories low while maintaining flavor. He tells the group that while he admires their discipline in avoiding guilty pleasures, he hates seeing them suffer. He wants them to be able to eat anything they want while still performing at their best. Himari is stunned by the realization that she no longer has to hold back. The other girls circle the ingredient list, verifying the numbers. They realize that the cake actually fits within their strict daily calorie limits. Overwhelmed by the relief of eating something sweet without ruining their diet, they begin to cry tears of joy as they devour the dessert. Himari looks at Ryu but tries to hide her expression. She turns away, telling him to wipe the smug look off his face, but begrudgingly admits the cake was delicious. She tells him he gets a pass. Ryu whispers, realizing this means he is officially welcome to the dorm. Excited, he extends his hand for a handshake, but Himari slaps it away. She warns him not to get too comfortable. Managing their nutrition is hard work. She threatens that if even one of them is unsatisfied in the future, he will be fired immediately. Undeterred, Ryu watches the girls eat with a determined smile. He silently vows to make all of them fall in love with his cooking and use his skills to help them become the greatest athletes in the world. Days have passed since Ryo Kominato took charge of the women's dormitory cafeteria. Despite his efforts, the dining hall is disturbingly empty at breakfast, with only a tiny fraction of the students showing up. Even the part-time helpers are baffled, whispering among themselves that the food is delicious enough to rejuvenate a person, yet the seats remain empty. Realizing that delicious food alone isn't enough to win their trust, Ryu devises a new plan. He takes to the PA system to announce a proposal, an exchange diary. He explains that since an athlete's body is their capital, he wants to support them fully. However, to create perfect nutritional plans, he claims he needs detailed information regarding their body types, private struggles, and even their measurements. He asks them to write this data on questionnaires and deposit them in a box he has set up. Ryu waits confidently, believing this scientific approach demonstrates his dedication. Hours later, he opens the box, expecting a flood of data. Instead, he finds only a few scraps of paper, each containing insults and abuse. Devastated but desperate, he decides to confront the dorm leaders directly. He starts by knocking on Himari's door. She attempts to slam it in his face, shouting at him for invading her privacy. When Ryu refuses to leave until she answers, she dismisses him, calling his questions inappropriate and adding that she hates writing on paper anyway. Lacking a digital alternative, Ryu moves on to Kyouko Kenzaki. Unlike the hostile tennis player, the judo specialist listens to his request with a mischievous smirk. Flustered and realizing she is just teasing him, Ryu storms away, feeling like everyone is taking him for a fool. He reasons that if he can get just one of the 4 elite athletes to acknowledge him, the rest of the dorm will follow. Seeing Kaoru Moroha in the hallway, he approaches her next. However, the gymnast spots him and immediately sprints away. Refusing to give up, Ryu chases after her, demanding she answer his questions. Kaoru shrieks that a demon is chasing her and flees down the hallway at top speed. Ryu tries to pursue her but quickly loses sight of the gymnast, realizing too late that he is lost in the massive dormitory again. Suddenly, a door opens and Yuzuki Ichino steps out. Ryu is stunned to see her. He asks if they can talk, and she agrees, though she nonchalantly continues drying her wet hair with a towel while standing in front of a hallway mirror. Ryu questions why she didn't answer his questionnaire. Ichino's replies coolly that while she understands different people require different nutrition, she knows her own body better than anyone else. She questions why she would need an outsider's help for that. Before Ryu can formulate a counter-argument, she finishes drying her hair and dismisses him with a curt goodbye. Later that night, Ryu sits alone in the library, reading sports magazines featuring Ichinos. He learns that she started swimming at a very young age and has won numerous diving competitions. The media describes her as shy, but recalling her earlier dismissal, Ryu thinks she seems more like a cold, efficient robot. Suddenly, the lights flicker. Himari enters the room, scolding him for using electricity past lights out. Ryu apologizes, explaining that he lost track of time while brainstorming a new menu. Himari appreciates his passion, but notices the magazine in his hands. He admits he is curious about the swimmer because he feels she rejected him from the bottom of her heart earlier. Himari sighs, explaining that Ichino's has that attitude toward everyone. She contrasts herself with the swimmer. While Himari is treated like a problem child by coaches despite her hard work, Ichino's is regarded as a flawless genius who doesn't need anyone. Himari concludes that the diver is fine being alone because she is self-sufficient. Unbeknownst to them, Ichino's is standing just outside the door, listening to the entire conversation. She turns to leave, accepting Himari's assessment, but stops when she hears Ryu speak up. He disagrees firmly. He argues that while Ichino's may seem cold, she actually means well and is simply easily misunderstood. He insists that there are still many ways his cooking can support her. Outside the door, Ichino silently walks back to her room, the chef's defense lingering in her mind. Early the next morning, Ryu fights off sleep as he organizes his research papers. He jolts himself awake, scolding himself that this is no time to rest. He glances at a small box he prepared, the key to his new strategy, and nods with determination. Later at the pool, Ichino stands atop the high diving platform. She stares at the water below before launching herself into the air, executing a complex series of 360-degree flips. She slices into the water and surfaces, but her expression is clouded with doubt. She wonders internally if the dive was executed correctly. Her teammates praise the performance, calling it amazing, but whisper among themselves that it seemed slightly off compared to her usual standard. When Ichino's catches them staring, the other girls quickly apologize, muttering that they have no right to critique a genius. Even the coach notes the subtle error in her form, but dismisses it, reasoning that a prodigy like her doesn't need excessive worrying. Ichino's overhears everything, feeling isolated by the pedestal they have placed her on. Suddenly, slow clapping breaks the tension. Ryu approaches, praising the dive for having an incredibly small splash. Ichino's is surprised to see him. He notes that she looks worried and asks if she wants to talk. To his surprise, she doesn't walk away. She sits down next to him and finally reveals the information she withheld earlier: her height, weight, body fat ratio, and daily routine. Ryu analyzes the data immediately. He calculates that she requires around 3,000 calories daily. Ichino's confirms she consumes about 1,600 calories between breakfast and lunch and makes up the remaining 1,400 at dinner, balancing proteins and carbohydrates perfectly. Ryu is puzzled. Her diet is technically flawless, yet she admits to feeling sluggish without knowing why. He realizes that if nutrition isn't the problem, the root cause must be something else. If he can't find the angle soon, her rivals will catch up to her. Digging deeper, Ryu asks why she became a swimmer. Ichino's hesitates before revealing that her parents were always busy, so they enrolled her in swimming classes to keep her occupied. She was praised for her skill, so she continued. She admits that diving is her favorite aspect because the moment she touches the water, she forgets all unnecessary thoughts. It is her best way to pass the time. Ryu notes that her reasoning sounds a bit cold. She agrees, stating she hears that often. However, remembering the sad expression she wore earlier, Ryu shakes his head. He tells her that he doesn't see a cold prodigy. He sees a normal girl who feels pressure and anxiety just like anyone else. He insists that her impatience to fix her form proves she takes this seriously, not just to pass time. Flustered by his insight, Ichino abruptly stands up. She accuses him of making strange interpretations and declares she is going to lunch, asserting again that she knows herself best. As she grabs her bag and walks away, Ryu catches a glimpse of something inside her open bag, a bottle of medication. Ryu approaches Ichino's, holding out the small bottle he noticed earlier. He identifies it as a nutritional supplement and asks why she is taking it. When she replies defensively, Ryu explains his theory. Her sluggish performance isn't due to a lack of talent, but a simple energy deficiency. Ichino argues that this is impossible, as she calculates her nutrition perfectly. Ryu counters that supplements are meant to support a diet, not replace it. He suspects she is taking these pills without eating proper meals. He proposes a wager. If he can prove she isn't eating properly, she must allow him to take full charge of her lunch from now on. Ichino dismisses him coldly, snatching the bottle back and walking away. Later in the dorm common room, Kaoru arrives with snacks from the gymnastics club. Himari happily takes one, but Kaoru teases Ichino, asking if she will refrain from eating as usual to maintain her figure. To everyone's shock, Ichino actually accepts a snack. However, the girls fail to notice Ryu hiding behind a pillar, muttering to himself as he observes Ichino's every move. Over the next few days, it becomes apparent that Ryu is practically stalking the swimmer. He hides behind curtains, crouches behind plants, and even wears ridiculous wigs to keep an eye on her eating habits. The other girls whisper in the washroom, debating whether Ryu is flattering her or just being a creepy stalker. Ichino steps out of a stall and stands before the sink. Ignoring the gossip, she takes out her supplement bottle. Staring at the pills, she drifts into a childhood memory. She recalls being left alone at home with money on the table and a note telling her to buy whatever she likes. In the flashback, young Ichino stands in a convenience store, unsure what to buy. She overhears a mother and son discussing Doria, with the boy excited because it is delicious. Ichino buys food and returns to her empty house. However, as she eats in silence, she focuses only on the unpleasant sound of her own chewing. She realizes she has to chew over and over just to process the food. To her efficient mind, the time spent chewing is a waste. Eating is merely a tedious process of intake. She concludes that supplements are superior because they are efficient. Back in the present, Ichino opens the bottle to take a pill. Suddenly, Ryu bursts in. He declares that his suspicions were correct. She relies too much on supplements, causing her appetite for real food to vanish. He points out that she consistently leaves food on her plate, proving she isn't fueling her body correctly. Himari storms in, screaming at Ryu for being in the girls' washroom and calling his behavior gross. She demands he leave immediately, or she will report him. Ryu refuses to budge until he finishes his argument. Himari tries to argue, but Ichino interrupts. Admitting defeat, Ichino hands the bottle to Ryu. She acknowledges that it is her loss and agrees to let him make her meals as promised. Ryu declares the supplements confiscated and orders her to follow him to the cafeteria immediately. Himari, realizing the two have formed a strange understanding, sighs and remarks that she feels unneeded and weirded out by both of them. In the cafeteria, Ichino waits skeptically. Ryu serves her a bowl of soup, explaining that this meal is the bare minimum designed to fix her eating habits while providing maximum nutrition in the fastest way possible. Ichino lifts the bowl, relieved that it is a liquid she doesn't have to chew extensively. She takes a sip and is immediately stunned by the flavor. It is delicious. Ryu grins, asking how it tastes. He reveals he added a certain magic to the soup and asks if she feels her body heating up. As if on cue, Ichino realizes she is sweating. Her body feels like it is literally burning from the inside. Ichino tries to explain the heat in her body, but she is speechless. Ryu smiles, instructing her to stop talking and start eating. He guides her through the meal sequence. Rice ball first, then salad, followed by the soup to maximize absorption. As she eats, Ryu explains the science behind the menu. Her sluggishness is caused by an energy deficiency. She was burning more fuel than she was taking in, and supplements alone couldn't bridge the gap. He designed this meal to boost her carbohydrate intake with fruit and rice. The centerpiece, however, is the pork shabu, which is rich in vitamin B1. Since B1 converts carbs into energy but is sensitive to heat, he used a paitan soup base, usually Usually nutrients are lost in boiling water, but by turning that water into a drinkable broth, he ensured she absorbs 100% of the vitamins. Ryu admits he also secretly added garlic to further boost absorption and boiled the meat to separate the oil, removing the fat that athletes dread. Ichino thinks he is surprisingly talkative, but before she realizes it, she has finished the entire meal without feeling the usual chore of chewing. Ryu nods in satisfaction, instructing her to continue this diet for a week. Later at the pool, Ichino stands on the diving board. She is skeptical that one meal could fix her sluggishness, but as she prepares to jump, she feels a surge of power returning to her limbs. She executes the dive. Her teammates gasp in amazement. The height, rotation, and entry are flawless. Surfacing, Ichino realizes her legs feel stronger and her body rotation is effortless. She is stunned that Ryu's food made such an immediate difference. The next day, Ichino debates what to do for lunch. Suddenly, Ryu's voice booms over the school's PA system, announcing to the entire campus that he has prepared a marvelous dish, specifically for swimming club member Ichino. Mortified by the public broadcast, she storms into the cafeteria to scold him. Ryu shrugs, noting that she wouldn't have come if he hadn't called her. He serves her lunch, and a routine begins. 1 week later, Ryu comments that Ichino looks much healthier. She calls him a stalker for noticing, though he claims it is just his job. Finishing her meal, Ichino reveals that she will be away for the next 3 days at a training camp. Ryu is momentarily taken aback, but accepts it, satisfied that he has proven nutrition was the cause of her slump. Concerned, he extends his pinky finger, asking her to promise that she will eat properly while she is away. Ichino instinctively reaches out to complete the pinky promise, but realizes what she is doing. Blushing furiously, she shouts at him not to treat her like a child and storms off. Ryu is left wondering if she is always this emotional. 2 days later, Ryu wanders the hall, muttering to himself. He realizes that stalking and meal management took up most of his time, and without Ichino there, he is bored. He wonders if she is doing well at the camp. Suddenly, Himari, Kyouko, and Kaou burst into the kitchen, looking furious. They demand to know if he did something to the swimmer. Confused, Ryu reminds them he has only been making her meals. Himari drops the bombshell. Ichino seemed to be performing perfectly, but she suddenly collapsed at the training camp. Ryu freezes, shocked by the news. Ryu sprints down the hallway, demanding to know what Himari meant by Ichino collapsing. Himari, equally stressed, snaps back that she doesn't know the details, as the swimmer was lively until Friday. She accuses him of being the cause, suggesting his constant hovering over the past few days stressed her out. The two begin to argue in the corridor until Kaou shouts at them to stop fighting. Ryu bursts through the infirmary door to find Ichino sitting on a medical bed, looking pale. The other girls rush in, asking if she is all right. The school nurse assures them that Ichino is stable after receiving an IV drip, but she will be unable to practice for a while. Ryu steps forward, asking the nurse if the cause is a carbohydrate deficiency. The nurse confirms it seems to be the case. Furious, Ryu marches up to the bed. He demands to know why she broke their promise to eat properly. He insists he isn't nagging just to be annoying. He wants her body to withstand the intense training she loves. Himari intervenes, telling him to back off and asking why he is blaming the victim. However, Ichino quietly apologizes, admitting fault. The apology silences the room. Himari, protective of her friend, coldly tells Ryu to get out if he plans to blame her further. Respecting the mood, he leaves the room in silence. That night in the cafeteria, the part-time staff bids Ryu goodnight, noticing that the usually energetic chef seems absent-minded and troubled. Alone in the kitchen, Ryu replays the events in his head. He realizes Ichino did eat his meals properly before she left. Her collapse wasn't caused by the intensity of the camp training, but rather something related to the act of eating itself when he wasn't there. He wonders if the camp food contained ingredients she hated, but dismisses that as too simple. He vows to solve this puzzle for the first person who trusted him with a questionnaire. The next morning, Ryu visits the swimming department and corners a female student. He recognizes her as someone who was with Ichino at the training camp. The girl admits she is just a one-sided admirer of the prodigy, but she agrees to answer his questions. Ryu asks about Ichino's behavior during the camp. The girl recalls that, surprisingly, Ichino ate lunch with the group, which was a rare event that made everyone happy. However, the girl notes something felt off. While Ichino usually does everything with ease, watching her eat in the cafeteria felt awkward, like she was challenging a difficult enemy rather than enjoying a meal. Ryu realizes she was having trouble eating. The girl adds that back in swimming school, Ichino once asked the group if they didn't think eating food was a waste of time. This shocking statement, combined with the knowledge that her parents were busy, leads Ryu to a conclusion. He realizes that Ichino views eating as an inefficient chore. When she is with Ryu, she eats because he prepares efficient meals, like soup, and monitors her. At the camp, trying to keep her promise to him, she forced herself to eat solid food properly, but her mental block against the inefficiency of chewing likely caused her to stop eating enough to sustain her energy. Determined to fix this root cause, Ryu ties on his apron and gets to work. Later, he tracks down Ichino, who is surprised to see him. Ryu bows his head, apologizing sincerely for blaming her earlier. Ichino tries to dismiss it, saying the issue is settled, but he interrupts. He announces that he has finally created a dish that will cure her trouble once and for all. Ichino looks confused, wondering if he is still obsessing over her diet. Ignoring her hesitation, Ryu pulls her to her feet and tells her not to think, just to follow him. He leads her to the cafeteria. When he throws open the doors to reveal his creation, Ichino's eyes go wide in shock. Inside the cafeteria, a lively party is already in full swing. Ichino is confused, asking what on earth is happening. Kaoru claims they are all here because Ichino supposedly invited them to eat together. She denies this immediately. Ryu laughs, admitting he lied to everyone to organize a surprise welcome-back party for the swimmer. Ichino sits down, bewildered by the spread of food. Everything appears to be fruit-based. Himari playfully challenges the picky eater to an eating contest. The atmosphere is light-hearted, and they begin sharing a fruit pizza. Ichino even engages in rare banter, teasing Himari about whether a princess knows how to cut a pizza. As she takes a bite, a genuine, dazzling smile breaks across her face. The entire room goes silent. The girls are stunned, having only ever seen her wear an expressionless iron mask. Overcome with excitement, they swarm Ichino with hugs. Ichino, embarrassed and overwhelmed, pushes them away, asking for space, but she catches Ryu watching her with a satisfied grin. She approaches Ryu, demanding an explanation for the strange menu. Ryu reveals that the theme of the meal is playfulness. He explains that appetite isn't just about physical hunger, it requires curiosity. To fix her mechanical view of eating, he needed to surprise her. Ryu breaks down the logic behind the menu, explaining that the pickled watermelon provides necessary hydration, while its sourness stimulates the appetite. Next, the pie wraps conceal pork and beans rich in vitamin B1, designed to engage her eyes with their colorful appearance and the fun of opening them. Finally, the fruit pizza offers unexpected toppings to spark interest, while its format naturally encourages sharing, ensuring she never has to eat alone again. Ryu assures her that despite the party appearance, the nutritional balance of carbohydrates and vitamin B1 is perfect for her training. Ichino asks about the final dish, the doria. Ryu reveals he created a fruit doria for dessert. He reinvented the dish she associated with loneliness into a sweet and sour experience. Ichino tries to argue that socializing while eating is a waste of calories and stamina, but Ryu cuts her off. He tells her firmly that meals are meant to be shared. Food is delicious because it is fun and lively. This is the philosophy of his cafeteria. Ichino closes her eyes, finally realizing the truth. She collapsed at the training camp not because of the food quality, but because she was isolated. She drifted away from eating because she missed the warmth of dining with Ryu and the others. She calls him cheeky and walks away, hiding her gratitude. The next morning, he stands in the kitchen, sighing that the cafeteria feels lonesome again. Suddenly, a tray is placed on the counter. He looks up to see Ichino, who has finished every bite of her breakfast. She thanks him for the food, with a sincere look. Ryu smiles, knowing his passion has finally reached her. The swimmer has officially fallen in love with his cooking. Ryu sits on the sofa watching TV, where a reporter introduces the greatest hope of Judo and the pride of their academy, Yawara. On screen, the athlete answers questions with perfect grace. She states that the campus lacks nothing and that she loves her sport more than ever. Thanking everyone for their support, the interviewer praises her, calling her a true Yamato Nadeshiko, the ideal Japanese woman. Ryu is captivated. He admires her dedication, noting that every fiber of her being seems devoted to Judo. He is starstruck, realizing that such a noble athlete attends this very school. He immediately rushes to the location, even when a rude journalist asks about her recent losing streak and accuses her of betraying expectations. Yawara handles it elegantly. She smiles, claiming she takes criticism in stride to push herself to new heights. Ryu blushes when she smiles at him, completely charmed by her spirit and elegance. Later, Ryu heads to the kitchen, determined to put 120% effort into dinner. However, his focus is ruined when he finds Kyouko Kanzaki performing an advanced pigeon pose yoga stretch right in the middle of his workspace. When he shouts at her to leave, Kyouko casually explains that her room is too small and she hates being watched, so the kitchen is perfect. Ryu points out that he is watching her, but Kyouko dismisses him, implying he doesn't count as people. He tries to throw her out, thinking she just enjoys messing with guys her age. Kyouko refuses to leave, insisting she needs help fixing a wardrobe mishap. Ryu, furious, yells at her to find someone else since this is a girls' dorm. He mentally compares the annoying, brazen Kyouko to the noble, disciplined Yawara-chan, wondering how they can possibly share the same sport. Later, Kyouko is relaxing when other dorm residents approach her. They express anxiety about living with a man, mentioning past experiences with creeps. Kyouko reassures them, explaining that she has tested Ryu thoroughly. She notes that no matter how much she teases or pushes him, he treats everyone respectfully. To put their minds at ease completely, she promises one final challenge to make sure he behaves properly. That evening, Ryu stands outside the large communal bath, lamenting that he cannot use it because it is reserved for the girls. Suddenly, Kyouko appears behind him. She appears behind him, teasingly asking why he isn't going in. Ryu freezes, panic rising, unsure if she is just trying to play a prank. However, instead of looking, he scolds her. He tells her he isn't a pervert like she thinks. He is here to cook seriously. He lectures her, demanding she take a page from Yawara's book and act with more discipline and dignity. Kyouko laughs, revealing she is wearing a swimsuit. The test was just a harmless trick passed down by the other girls. Ryu, embarrassed but respected, shouts at her to get dressed and go back to her room. His sudden yell startles her, and in her flustered motion, her wig slips off, revealing the long black hair underneath. Ryu stares in stunned silence. Without the wig, Kyouko looks exactly like the girl on TV. The realization hits him. The annoying, teasing Kyouko and the noble, elegant Yawara are the same person. Ryu sits on the floor of the hallway, staring up at the girl. He points out that she has black hair, yet she was just wearing a blonde wig. Kyouko picks up the wig, confirming his suspicion. Ryu struggles to reconcile the two images in his mind: the messy, annoying girl from the kitchen and the elegant, noble Yawara from the TV interview. Kyouko admits that she is indeed the famous Yawara he saw on screen earlier. Ryu is stunned, noting that the two personas feel like completely different people. Kyouko smirks, remarking that makeup is a girl's best disguise. When Ryu asks why a national star acts like such a pest in the dorm, she turns away with a smile, simply stating that she is following the path she believes in. She tells him that her secret isn't really a secret, he can tell anyone he wants, and then waves goodbye, leaving him alone in the hallway to process the shock. Still confused, Ryu calls his sister to verify the information. He explains that the famous Yawara wears a blonde wig, colored contacts, and piercings in the dorm. His sister laughs, refusing to believe that a national idol would try to seduce a loser like him. However, she confirms that Yawara's real family name is indeed Kanzaki. Ryu hangs up, realizing he is sitting on an unimaginable secret. The Yawara-chan of the Judo world is actually the eccentric Kyouko Kanzaki. Suddenly, a massive shadow looms over him. A huge man stands behind Ryu. Terrified, Ryu wonders if the man is a hitman sent to silence him for knowing the secret. However, the man introduces himself as the school's judo coach. He requests that Ryu prepare boxed lunches for the women's team for their upcoming match on Saturday. Ryu agrees, asking if Kyouko will be competing. The coach confirms it, stating she is their star player. Several days later, Ryu and the part-time staff arrive at the judo tournament venue with the packed lunches. Ryu scans the arena and spots the team. He watches Kyouko step onto the mat. Despite knowing the truth, he still struggles to connect the fierce, disciplined fighter in the uniform with the playful, mischievous girl from the dorm hallway. The match begins, but it ends in disaster. Kyouko takes a critical hit and loses the bout. The crowd begins to murmur, criticizing her performance and whispering that Kanzaki lost again and can kiss her Olympic dreams goodbye. While the part-timers distribute the lunches, Ryu overhears the coach scolding Kyouko. The coach blames her loss on her lifestyle, referencing her usual getup at the dorm. He shouts that if she dresses like a mess, she will think like a mess. Kyouko tries to reason with him, but the coach issues an ultimatum. If she loses the next match, she must drop the blonde wig and rebellious attitude for good. Ryu watches from a distance, realizing the immense pressure she is under. That night at the dorm, Kyouko waves a cheerful goodnight to the other girls in the hallway, acting as if the loss didn't bother her. However, the moment she locks her door, the facade crumbles. Remembering the coach's harsh words, she begins an intense workout, pushing herself to her limit while holding back tears. Suddenly, her door opens. Ryu steps in, holding a tray of food. He comments that for someone who jokes around so much, she is surprisingly serious about judo. Kyouko startles, quickly wiping her tears and asking why he came. Ryu tells her not to be so hard on herself. He places the dinner on her table, suggesting that the meal he whipped up might answer some of her worries. Ryu presents the dish to Kyouko. Shiratama, rice flour dumplings paired with kiwi and dried prunes. He explains that the infusion of ingredients is designed to refill the iron she lost during exercise, while the antioxidants aid in quick recovery. Kyouko takes a bite and is surprised by the intense sweetness. Ryu notes that sugar tastes sweeter when chilled, so he made sure to serve it ice cold to help her feel refreshed. Feeling the swamp of depression lift slightly, Kyouko opens up. She explains that her go-to winning pattern, a shoulder throw after securing a solid grip, has stopped working. In the past, her opponent's breathing and timing were like an open book to her, but recently, she can't pull it off. Believing she lacked back muscle, she started intense tube training, but the results haven't improved. She admits she doesn't know how the slump started, let alone how to end it. Ryu acknowledges her seriousness, but asks the difficult question, why does she insist on the wig and makeup if she knows the coach hates it? Kyouko turns away, simply stating that every girl has the right to dress the way she likes. Ryu senses there is more to it, but decides to drop the subject for now. As he leaves, Kyouko attempts to push him away, saying she doesn't want to be indebted to him anymore. Ryu leaves the room, determined to help her regardless of her refusal. Later, he sits in the common area, studying books on traditional Chinese medicine and the similarity theory, the idea that foods resembling body parts can heal those parts. Suddenly, Ichino speaks from directly behind him, causing him to nearly jump out of his skin. She reveals she has been standing there for 15 minutes watching him read. They discuss Kyouko's situation. Ryu notes that while Judo requires flexibility to handle various techniques, Kyouko is surprisingly stubborn. Ichino agrees, sharing a story about how Kyouko once came down with a high fever but refused to let anyone visit her because she didn't want to show weakness. Before leaving for practice, Ichino mentions that her shoulder has been bothering her and asks Ryu to cook something for it, a sign that she now fully trusts him. Motivated, he begins researching Kyouko's past. He pulls up old photos of Yawara-chan online. In every picture, she looks like a member of the nobility, prim, proper, and black-haired. He wonders why someone with blue blood elegance would make such a bold, rebellious change. Seeking answers, Ryu heads to the judo dojo, but he stops at the door, confused. Instead of the sounds of slamming bodies, the room is blasting loud, electronic dance music, EDM. Inside, the girls are practicing to the beat. A student explains to the bewildered chef that this was Kanzaki's idea. The EDM helps improve focus, rhythm, and upright throwing techniques. Ryu wonders if a sport built on tradition like judo really accepts this kind of atmosphere. The girls explain that Kanzaki respects tradition deeply and often cleans the dojo by herself. However, she hates that judo is seen as outdated, so she adds modern elements to attract the next generation. The scene shifts to Ryu, standing proudly before Kyouko in a professional chef's uniform. He explains that he used to think he had to earn such attire, but putting it on ignited a fire within him to stop being a wallflower, a confidence he credits Kyouko for helping him find. Kyouko, however, is feeling low. She reveals she plans to drop her rebellious blonde persona entirely. Her recent losing streak has convinced her that she is ruining the image of judo and that the coach was right all along. Ryu immediately cuts her off. He argues that the coach is only right if she loses. Winning changes everything. He reveals he has prepared a new dish specifically for her. When she hesitates, Ryu passionately defends her style, insisting that she isn't thinking like a mess, but is actually broadening the scope of judo by being her authentic self. He begs her to let him serve her tonight so she can prove everyone wrong. Moved by his words and the delicious smell, Kyouko relents, joking that it would be a waste to let the food go cold. She playfully leans into his personal space, telling him to hurry up. Ryu, flustered but determined, places the covered dish before her, watching as her eyes sparkle in anticipation. Ryu places a steaming dish in front of Kyouko, refusing to explain its contents immediately. He simply instructs her to dig in. She smiles confidently, guessing that the menu is designed to build muscle mass to help her overpower opponents with her signature throws. To her surprise, Ryu shakes his head. He corrects her, explaining that he has looked into her fighting style and decided to take an entirely different approach. This menu is designed to enhance her flexibility and footwork, not her raw power. Kyouko is instantly irritated. She demands to know if he is suggesting she give up her shoulder throw, the very technique that defines her. He clarifies that he doesn't want her to give it up, but rather to incorporate other techniques like pinning and footwork to become more versatile. She snaps, slamming her hand on the table and standing up in frustration. She lectures him on the philosophy of her sport, insisting that the true beauty of judo lies in winning by the throw. She feels the immense pressure of being the Yamato Nadeshiko of judo, a symbol of traditional elegance and power. She believes the world wants her to win a specific way, and struggling with anything else feels like a failure. Ryu cuts her off, his voice firm. He points out that this obsession with what they want is exactly what is holding her back. He reminds her that he admired her initially because she seemed willing to encourage creative thinking, but now she is trapping herself in a rigid box of tradition. He tells her that her reliance on a single throwing style is stifling her growth. The air between them grows tense, but Ryu breaks it by reminding her that the food is getting cold. Grumbling, Kyouko sits back down to eat. She takes a bite of the beef sinew okonomiyaki and is immediately silenced by the flavor. The dough is tender and the beef is incredibly flavorful. As she chews, she tastes the distinct textures of mushrooms and lemon, realizing this is a level of delicacy she hasn't experienced before. Ryu explains the science behind the dish. The sticky texture comes from a batter made of okra and taro, layered over beef sinew and stock. He meticulously selected these ingredients to support joint health and improve her flexibility. Impressed despite herself, Kyouko asks him to keep serving this lineup, though she still harbors doubts. A few days later, Ryu decides to check on Kyuko's progress. He sneaks into the judo practice room, expecting to see a standard training session. Instead, he walks into a scene of utter exhaustion. The other judo club members are sprawled on the floor, panting and defeated. In the center of the carnage stands Kyouko, looking completely energized and barely breaking a sweat. Ryu watches in confusion as Kyouko complains that her tank is still full and calls the practice a drag. As upbeat electronic music plays over the speakers, she begins to move rhythmically, treating the dojo floor like a club. Suddenly, a sparring partner rushes at her for a surprise attack. Without even flinching, Kyouko utilizes her leg, not for a throw, but for a sharp, sweeping strike. She takes the girl down effortlessly using pure footwork. In that moment, Kyouko has an epiphany. She realizes how long she has been mentally tied down by the obsession with throws. She recalls that her very first big finisher wasn't a shoulder throw, but a swinging leg sweep. The media and the public had praised her orthodox style so much that she forgot her natural instincts. Moving to the rhythm of the music, she feels the joy of Judo My Way returning. Ryu, watching from the sidelines, is amazed by her fluidity. Kyouko notices him and steps out to talk, wiping sweat from her brow. She apologizes for not hiding her true form, admitting that her technique feels genuinely great thanks to him. She explains that she had been slacking on her flexibility, specifically in her ankles and legs, and his menu was the perfect remedy. She asks how he figured out that footwork was her blind spot when she hadn't even realized it herself. Ryu admits he wasn't sure, but he knew he needed to find a new angle. He watched hours of her old match footage and noticed a swiping leg throw technique she used in the past that felt completely different from the stiff, traditional Kanzaki judo she practices now. He explains that he has been running into his own walls in the kitchen, trying to break free from the mindset of using cheap ingredients. Working with the athletes gave him a window to experiment with nutrition and new combinations. He wanted to give her that same window to break free from the same old routine. Kyouko teases him, noting the irony coming from the guy who served a calorie bomb cake on his first day. Ryu laughs, acknowledging that he learned that lesson the hard way. Kyouko blushes slightly, realizing how much he has helped her. She tells him her next match is this weekend and promises to show results. Ryu immediately switches back to chef mode, planning a meal that is easy to digest and focused on carbohydrates for energy. The night before the match, Kyouko visits the cafeteria for her pre-game meal. She watches Ryu serving the other girls, muttering to herself that he is still clueless about her feelings, but she is grateful nonetheless. As she finishes, she stands up and announces she is off to battle. Ryu tells her to knock them flat and watch her sugar intake. She looks at him with determination, vowing to stick to her judo and shut her coach up for good. They bump fists in a show of unity, and Ryu sends her off with a quick, "Good luck, ninja," wishing her Godspeed. Back at the Kominato household, his sisters are glued to the television, munching on snacks as they watch the live broadcast of Yawara-chan's match. They excitedly call their brother to ask if he is watching the grace and style of the judo star. Ryu, currently at the tournament venue, dryly reminds them that he is the one who delivered the lunches. He hangs up as the qualifying round begins. On the mat, Kanzaki faces her opponent with intense focus. The coach analyzes her usual strategy, expecting her signature back throw, but the opponent is prepared and dodges her grasp. Suddenly, the judoka switches tactics. Instead of forcing a throw, she uses her leg to lock her opponent's limb. The coach is stunned as she executes a perfect uchigari leg sweep, slamming her rival to the ground for an instant victory. In the post-match interview, the reporter praises her surprising footwork. She admits that until now, she was terrified of changing her upper body-focused style. However, thanks to the rare support of a certain someone, she realized she could evolve without losing her identity. The audience immediately begins gossiping about a potential lover, while Ryu blushes in the stands. Later, Ryu calls his sisters from a payphone. They rave about the cool footwork and ask about the mystery supporter she mentioned. He jokingly suggests it might have been him, but they laugh it off as a bad joke. Suddenly, Kanzaki, now wearing her blonde wig disguise, sneaks up behind him and whispers in his ear. He freaks out as she teases him for using an ancient payphone. When his call cuts off due to lack of coins, she offers him her smartphone. He accepts and starts a video call with his family. The moment his sisters see the famous athlete on the screen, they completely lose their minds. Since Kanzaki is wearing her blonde wig, Ryu's sisters fail to recognize her as the famous judo star Yawara-chan during the video call. Kanzaki mischievously introduces herself, claiming she and Ryu are very close. The sisters immediately tease their brother, realizing he has a preference for flashy blonde girls, and Ryu struggles to deny the accusation. He attempts to clear up the misunderstanding by revealing that this flashy girl is actually the serious athlete they just watched on TV. However, Kanzaki interrupts him by pinching his side. She humbly introduces herself as a regular member of the judo club and credits their recent success entirely to Ryu's personalized nutritional support. The sisters are moved to hear that Ryu has become essential to the academy. When they ask for her name, Kanzaki avoids answering. Instead, she leans in and gives Ryu a quick peck on the cheek. She winks, telling them it is a secret, and ends the call, leaving the sisters in shock, and he's unable to convince them that the blonde girl and Yawara are the same person. After hanging up, Ryu asks her how long she plans to keep up the disguised act. Kanzaki reflects on a conversation with her coach, who had apologized for criticizing her appearance and gave her permission to dress however she likes. She explains to Ryu that she still feels immature in her judo. She will only compete in her true black-haired form once she gains genuine confidence. As she walks away, Ryu resolves not to let his guard down, assuming she is simply bold and teasing by nature. However, Kanzaki is internally panicking, blushing furiously, and wondering why she acted so impulsively over something as small as a cheek kiss. She realizes she took his remark about liking blondes to heart more than she intended. Later in the classroom, Himari and Yuzuki invite Kaoru to walk to club practice with them, eager to discuss a weekly magazine. To their surprise, Kaoru remains silent and distant. She refuses to go to practice, stating she is returning to the dorm instead. When Himari asks if she is sick, Kaoru turns around with a strained, fake smile to hide her true feelings before walking away. Kaoru Moroha is a first-year student and a gymnastics prodigy who grew up competing alongside her older brothers. Although she has adjusted well to life at the academy, often engaging in playful arguments with Himari, she faces a professional hurdle. During practice, she lands a perfect jump, but her coach offers a critique instead of pure praise. While her technical skills are flawless, the coach warns that she lacks expressiveness, a crucial element she must master if she hopes to reach the Olympics. Confused by what it truly means, Kaoru observes a senior student, Watanabe, admiring her long limbs and cool, captivating performance style. Kaoru approaches her, asking if she might possess that same elegance by her third year. However, Watanabe simply hugs her, laughing that Kaoru's true charm lies in her boundless energy. Other students surround her, treating her like a cute mascot, which leaves Kaoru feeling conflicted about her childish image. Later, she watches a TV interview featuring an Olympic candidate known for her feminine softness and elegant beauty. Comparing herself to this ideal, she feels inadequate and leaves practice early, claiming she isn't feeling well. Back in the present, Himari and Yuzuki watch her walk away. Himari assumes she is just tired from staying up late reading manga, while Yuzuki worries that the gymnast might be hiding an injury. The next morning, Ryu wakes up refreshed and heads to the cafeteria. He reflects on how difficult it is to balance his cooking duties with his high school studies, but he remains determined to earn his diploma. With some spare time before the next shift, he decides to patrol and clean the dorm's lost and found area. Staring at the messy pile of items, he sighs, noting that even girls can be sloppy, and recalls recent reports about clothes being stolen from the dorm. Ryu notices a figure sneaking through the hallway, attempting to disguise themselves with a scarf wrapped around their head. He instantly recognizes the suspicious individual as Kaoru. Confused by her behavior, he notes that she usually announces her actions loudly before doing anything, so this silent sneaking is completely out of character. Curious about her intentions, he decides to follow her. Kaoru creeps into the laundry room and begins rummaging through a basket. To Ryu's dismay, she pulls out a piece of misplaced clothing. He collapses to the ground in disappointment, wondering if the recent reports of a laundry thief were actually about her. Kaoru inspects the item, tosses it back, and picks out another. She holds the outfit up against herself, studying her reflection and trying to imagine how she would look wearing it. Unable to watch any longer, Ryu jumps up and shouts at her to stop. Kaoru jolts in terror. Realizing she has been caught, she immediately raises her hands in surrender, begging him to spare her life. Ryu sighs, scolding her for snooping around the laundry room out of weird curiosity. He demands to know what she was thinking. Kaoru hesitates, looking desperate, before suddenly blurting out a shocking request. Ryu is left completely speechless. Ryu is horrified by Kaoru's request, demanding to know who taught her such misleading phrasing. He scolds her, warning that she shouldn't say things like that even as a joke. Seeing the desperate, serious look on her face, he realizes she isn't thinking clearly. He decides she is simply exhausted and acting weird, so he practically drags her to her room, tucks her into bed, and orders her to rest for the entire day. Later in the cafeteria, he asks Himari to deliver a meal to Kaoru. He hints that the gymnast is dealing with a personal issue, likely a specific teenage girl problem, that falls outside his jurisdiction as a male cook. He asks Himari to have a girl-to-girl talk with her, and she agrees. Himari visits Kaoru's room with rice porridge. After Kaoru thanks her, Himari gently asks what is bothering her. She admits she longs for the confidence of a truly mature woman, feeling like a child compared to those who draw attention effortlessly. She wants to have that same confidence and presence. Himari smiles, recognizing it as a familiar adolescent struggle. She confidently accepts the challenge, promising to teach Kaoru all the girl power she has mastered. She immediately gets to work, styling Kaoru's hair and applying makeup. Soon after, Yuzuki and Kanzaki watch as Himari snaps photos of the transformed gymnast, declaring her super cute. Yuzuki observes the chaotic makeover session from the sidelines, remarking that Kaoru shouldn't worry so much about surface-level things, while Kanzaki points out that everyone struggles in their own way. Himari excitedly shows Kaoru the results online, proudly pointing out how much attention the photo is getting. She lectures Kaoru on social media tricks like camera angles and lighting, but the girl can feel that her original goal is slipping away. Kanzaki interrupts, declaring that Himari's approach is all wrong. She jokes that confidence isn't something you can rush or force overnight. She starts crowding Kaoru's space and teasing her relentlessly, which quickly irritates the gymnast. Eventually, Himari exhausts herself and falls asleep mid-conversation. Kanzaki laughs at how quickly the tennis player runs out of energy. Kaoru looks at her sleeping friend, wondering if the makeover really helped her grow at all. Yuzuki speaks up, bluntly stating that makeup and photos won't solve what's truly troubling her. Kaoru admits she feels lost and doesn't know how to ease the pain weighing on her chest. Kanzaki offers an alternative, suggesting Kaoru rely on Ryu. She reminds her that their kitchen mom looks after both their bodies and minds, encouraging Kaoru to lean on him for support. After a busy shift at the cafeteria, Ryu is motivated by the increasing number of students eating his food. He checks the suggestion box and discovers a letter from Kaoru. In the note, she apologizes for her strange behavior earlier and explains the root of her anxiety. The coach has criticized her for lacking expressiveness, leading her to compare her childish figure to Kanzaki's mature physique. She fears that growing up surrounded by brothers has stripped her of the feminine charm required for gymnastics, and she begs him for help. Ryu reads the heartfelt plea and vows to fix the situation. Later, he visits the gymnasium to observe the practice. He is impressed by the athlete's superhuman movements, particularly Kaoru, who executes a complex aerial twist without even using a jump platform. However, the coach interrupts the routine with harsh feedback. He tells Kaoru that while her technical skills are flawless, her performance is not beautiful. He criticizes her lack of grace and orders her to observe the other athletes to learn how to captivate an audience. Ryu watches from the sidelines, confused by the critique, as her movements looked graceful to him. Kaoru approaches him, embarrassed that he witnessed her being scolded. Ryu tries to comfort her, admitting that as an amateur, he cannot tell the difference between her performance and the others. He suggests that perhaps the feminine beauty the coach demands is not what truly matters most. Kaoru corrects him, explaining that gymnastics scoring is split into two categories: the D score for technical difficulty and the E score for artistic execution and beauty. She believes that a plain and unfeminine girl like her will never achieve a high E score. Ryu thinks for a moment and asks if she really needs that specific type of glamour, reassuring her that she is fine, just the way she is. Kaoru immediately twists his words, asking excitedly if that means he finally sees her as mature. When Ryu denies it, she grins and accuses him of secretly looking at her in a creepy way. Ryu shouts in frustration, telling her that this teasing behavior is precisely why she is considered childish. Laughing, Kaoru sighs and wishes for a magic meal that could instantly grant her a perfect body, shiny hair, glowing skin, and a flawless performance. She assumes such a thing is impossible, but Ryu pauses as an idea strikes him. He confidently declares that such a meal actually exists. Later, Kaoru is playing video games in Yuzuki's room when a note slides under the door, announcing that dinner will be ready in 10 minutes. Yuzuki tells her to feel free to stay, but Kaoru heads to the cafeteria, internally skeptical that any dish could actually make her more feminine just by eating it. Ryu welcomes her at the door and points to a table set for two. He explains that today's menu is hand-rolled sushi, which is too lonely to eat by oneself, so he decided to join her. Kaoru questions his logic, wondering if a grown-up lady shouldn't be able to handle eating alone, but Ryu ignores the philosophical debate to explain the science behind the meal. He breaks down the nutritional strategy. The tuna and bonito are rich in vitamin B6, which supports overall hormonal balance, while the vitamin B2 in the seaweed boosts the absorption of that B6. To top it off, he prepared a soy milk-based soup rich in isoflavones, which support the body's natural balance. He declares this combination the ultimate dish of beauty. Kaoru makes her own sushi roll and takes a bite, immediately impressed by the flavor of his vinegared rice. Suddenly, Ryu's tone turns serious. He tells her that she is fine just the way she is, and that she is only dragging herself down by comparing herself to others. He admits he doesn't know much about gymnastics, but he likes her confident, straightforward personality and urges her not to try to become someone else. Kaoru falls silent, stunned by his sudden sincerity. Kaoru laughs at Ryu's sudden seriousness, mocking him for trying to act cool when it clearly doesn't suit his usual personality. Ryu snaps back, telling her to shut up, but internally he smiles, relieved that she has returned to her usual energetic self. He reveals in his thoughts that the specific nutrients were just a backup plan. His real goal was the luncheon technique, using the shared meal to help her relax so he could understand the true root of her anxiety, which he suspects has nothing to do with femininity. He asks to review her usual diet just to be sure she is eating right. Kaoru confidently assures him that she has no problems in that department because she has powerful allies. She shows him her phone, revealing a group chat with her brothers, where they constantly share high-level nutritional data and advice. Ryu reads through the files and admits that her siblings might actually know more about gymnastics nutrition than he does. Ryu asks to see the nutrition file on Kaoru's phone. Although she hesitates, she eventually hands it over as a special exception. He teases her, promising not to reveal her secrets, which causes her to panic and demand the phone back immediately. Ignoring her protests, Ryu analyzes the document and declares that he has figured out the reason for her recent slump. When Kaoru denies being in a slump, Ryu presses for details. He confirms that all her siblings are male, then asks whether she has been suffering from chronic exhaustion and shortness of breath lately. Kaoru admits she has experienced those symptoms, but attributes them to staying up late. Ryu corrects her, explaining that she is suffering from a nutritional deficiency because the advice from her brothers is suited to male bodies, not hers. Feeling isolated and singled out because of her gender, she snaps. She shouts that she has heard enough and sprints out of the cafeteria, leaving Ryu behind. Back in her room, she fumes, convincing herself that her lack of progress has nothing to do with nutrition and everything to do with her lack of feminine charm. Her sadness is interrupted when Himari and Yuzuki knock on the door, jokingly asking if they can sleep over before admitting they only want to borrow the rest of a manga series. They end up sitting together, and Kaoru opens up about her frustration. She explains that although her brothers are close to her, their well-meaning advice has made her feel alienated, and Ryao poking at that sore subject hurt her feelings. Himari agrees that Ryu can be a nuisance, but Yuzuki points out a contradiction in Kaoru's thinking. She notes that Kaoru claims she wants to be more feminine, yet gets upset when she is treated differently from the boys. Yuzuki suggests that Ryu isn't trying to be cruel. He is simply pointing out a biological reality to help her succeed. Himari teases Yuzuki for being suspiciously defensive of Ryu, joking that they should make a picture of him for the girls to step on as a loyalty test. Yuzuki insists she isn't taking his side, but the conversation leaves a lasting impression on Kaoru. Lying in bed, the gymnast reflects on Ryu's words and realizes she may have jumped to conclusions. Deciding she needs to apologize immediately, Kaoru heads to the cafeteria despite the late hour. She finds Ryu still awake, buried under a pile of nutrition books. She opens the door and begins to apologize for her outburst, but Ryu cuts her off excitedly. He declares that she arrived at the perfect moment because he has just finalized a menu that will solve her problem. Kaoru sits among the scattered books, while Ryu serves her the new dish. She hesitates to eat it without an explanation, admitting she feels nervous. But Ryu urges her to trust him and eat it in one go. She takes a bite, finds it incredibly delicious, and finishes the meal with satisfaction. When Kaoru returns to her room, she announces, "I'm back," waking Himari. She asks where she went, and Kaoru casually replies that she was at the cafeteria with Ryu for a while. Himari touches Kaoru's futon and realizes it is ice cold. Connecting the dots, the late hour, the untouched bed, and the visit to the cafeteria, Himari jumps to a playful conclusion. Himari notices Kaoru returning late and jokingly comments on her suspicious behavior. When Kaoru asks what she means, Yuzuki joins in, teasing about her late-night cafeteria visit. Kanzaki also chimes in, surprised by the story. Kaoru quickly explains that she just went to grab a meal, but her excited storytelling accidentally makes it sound more dramatic than it was, leaving the three older girls wide-eyed in shock. The next day in class, Kaoru drifts off briefly during a lecture, still savoring the memory of the delicious meal from the night before. Himari and Yuzuki gently wake her, and Kaoru confirms she will attend club activities. On the walk to the gym, she sprints ahead with renewed energy, reassuring Yuzuki that she's back to her usual cheerful self. At the gymnasium, the coach asks Kaoru how she managed her recent technique, but the conversation is interrupted by a TV crew from a popular morning news program. The reporters request a showcase performance for their segment. The other gymnasts panic, worried about the pressure of being the academy's poster girl on national television. They assume a senior student will be chosen, but the coach turns directly to Kaoru and nominates her. To everyone's amazement, Kaoru accepts the challenge without hesitation. The TV crew signals the start of the recording, and the interviewer asks Kaoru to begin her 85-second floor routine. On the sidelines, her teammates whisper nervously about her recent slump, wondering if it would be safer to switch her out. However, the coach reassures them, confident that Kaoru thrives under pressure and has finally overcome her mental block. Kaoru launches into her performance, executing high jumps, complex headstands, and a double body flip before landing perfectly. The spectators are amazed. Her movements aren't just back to normal, they are sharper and more precise than ever. The story flashes back to the previous night in the cafeteria to show the source of her renewed energy. Ryu served her a series of dishes her body instinctively needed. Even foods she usually disliked, like liver, tasted amazing when prepared his way. She also enjoyed a seared tuna steak bowl topped with a runny egg yolk and finished the meal with oyster-flavored sides, fried tofu, and soup. Afterward, he explains the science behind the menu. Her body has been low on iron, and he carefully combined heme and non-heme iron with vitamin C to make a perfectly balanced meal that restored her energy and helps combat her chronic fatigue. Kaoru asks how he knew the cause of her poor health. Ryu explains that she suffers from exercise-induced anemia, where the repeated impact from gymnastics landings breaks down red blood cells. Kaoru points out that she already takes 15 milligrams of iron daily, following her brother's advice. Ryu clarifies that 15 milligrams isn't enough for her. She needs 18 milligrams because women lose iron during menstruation. Kaoru shouts in embarrassment, telling him he shouldn't concern himself with such private matters. Ryu remains serious, lecturing her that ignoring her health is a sin. He explains that while her brothers couldn't have known because they are men, she has a responsibility to understand her own body's unique needs. He reassures her that her recent slump wasn't due to a lack of feminine charm, but simply because her body wasn't in peak condition. He advises her to stop trying to change and just be herself. Back in the present, Kaoru performs in front of the media cameras with renewed confidence. Remembering Ryu's words, she embraces her natural style, aiming to impress the audience with raw strength and skill rather than forced elegance. She executes a powerful flip and sticks the landing perfectly, proving that her unique brand of gymnastics is exactly where she belongs. As she sticks the landing, the media and her teammates erupt in applause. The other girls swarm her, amazed by her newfound strength and stability, asking what she changed. Kaoru modestly replies that she just tweaked her diet a little. Even the coach is impressed, noting that Kaoru has kept her signature energetic style while dramatically improving her expressiveness. The coach teases her, remarking that the performance was so captivating it looked like it was dedicated to a special someone. Kaoru blushes, denying that she was performing for anyone specific. Suddenly, she hears a male voice call her name. Thinking Ryu might have skipped making dinner to come watch her, she turns around excitedly and asks how her performance was. However, the person standing there is not the cook, but her older brother, Yoshiyuki Moroha. He laughs, explaining that he was invited as a surprise guest for the media coverage. Kaoru is stunned, asking why he is here. The interviewer steps in to introduce the pair as the famous Moroha athletic siblings, noting the high hopes for both to compete in the Olympics together. Yoshiyuki praises the high skill level of the academy and compliments his little sister's growth. The interviewer then turns the microphone to Kaoru, asking how she feels about her brother's surprise appearance. During the interview, she admits she was so excited that she accidentally called her brother Aniki on live TV. Afterward, Yoshiyuki praises her performance off camera, noting that while her skills were always good, her newfound awareness down to her fingertips has added a new layer of capability. Kaoru smiles, attributing her growth to the good people she has met at the dorm, specifically thinking of Ryu. The siblings renew their vow to reach the Olympics together and fist bump before Yoshiyuki prepares to leave. However, he stops to tease her one last time. He points out that she usually hates it when anyone outside the family calls her by her first name, yet she looked delighted earlier when she thought someone else was calling her. Flustered, Kaoru stammers that it is just a close friend. Yoshiyuki smirks, telling her to visit home sometime, and leaves. A few days later, the news feature on Itadaki Academy airs. The report highlights the 4 elite athletes, Himari, Yuzuki, Kanzaki, and Kaoru, and praises Kaoru for breaking out of her slump. However, the report drops a bombshell rumor. It mentions a mysterious high school chef living in the girls' dorm who supports them. Watching the broadcast, Himari scowls, muttering that she really doesn't like this unwanted attention. Himari draws the attention of her classmates. Boys are too flustered to approach her, and the girls eagerly ask for photos. She responds with a confident wink and a smile, reinforcing her reputation among her peers. Ryu observes her from his desk, noting how different her polished public persona is compared to her behavior at the dorm. As the famous daughter of a billionaire CEO, she seems like a natural-born star who doesn't have a care in the world, and Ryu admits to feeling jealous of her effortless life. The conversation shifts to her home life, where Himari confirms that her father bought a massive mansion previously owned by a foreign billionaire. She boasts about having servants and 3 first-class chefs who cooked for her daily, admitting that the food is the thing she misses most about home. Hearing about the 3-star chefs, Ryu's interest is immediately piqued. A classmate asks if she can visit the mansion, but Himari hesitates and awkwardly declines, saying it isn't a good time. Ryu, focused only on the culinary opportunity, stands up and loudly asks if he can come over to meet the chefs. The class is stunned by his nerve, and Himari furiously shuts him down, shouting at him not to talk to her at school. As the commotion settles, the other students whisper among themselves, wondering why Himari chooses to live in the dorms when her family's luxurious home is right there in Tokyo. Later at the tennis club, Himari finishes a grueling practice match against Kawaguchi Naomi, a top-ranked national player. Naomi raves about the academy's elite environment, praising the perfect facilities, top-tier diet coaching, and visits from former Olympians. Himari agrees, expressing her excitement about how much she can grow in such a place. She challenges Naomi to a race to see who makes it to the Olympics first. When Naomi asks why she is so fixated on the Olympics, Himari bluntly admits that she wants the gold medal. Naomi laughs, teasing her for having impure motives, which offends Himari, who insists that everyone has their own way of staying motivated. As Naomi leaves, Himari checks her phone and is shocked to see 300 unread messages. That evening, the exhausted athletes fill the cafeteria, and Ryu serves them a hearty meal. After the rush ends, he prepares to lock up for the night. However, while patrolling the hallway, he spots a group of suspicious visitors confronting Himari, who is clutching a broom. Ryu hides behind the stairs, initially worrying that the men might be stalkers and considering calling the police. He pauses when he hears a woman's sharp voice criticizing Himari's messy hair and unironed clothes, calling her a disgrace to the Natsuki family. Ryu realizes the woman is Himari's mother, surrounded by bodyguards in black suits. He sighs at the drama of the wealthy family visiting in secret to avoid attention. Himari tries to dismiss them, claiming she needs to sleep for early practice, but her mother delivers a cold ultimatum. She has come to take Himari home immediately and orders her to pack her bags. Ryu is shocked by the sudden ultimatum. Himari protests, reminding her mother that she never wanted to leave. Her mother insists she has already compromised by allowing Himari to enroll, hoping for a change of environment. However, she argues the change has failed. Himari's win-loss record has worsened, and her skills lag behind past alumni. Coldly, she explains she only allowed Himari to play tennis to enhance the Natsuki family's status. Viewing her as an investment, her mom warns that failure now would waste the resources spent on her. She demands Himari return to the mansion, dismissing the dorm as a shabby place where she cannot succeed independently. Listening from the shadows, Ryu is furious that a mother would refer to her own child as an investment. He mentally urges Himari to fight back with the same fire she usually uses against him, knowing how hard she has worked to balance tennis with housework and independent living. However, she simply trembles and stutters, unable to give a response. As the mother grabs Himari's hand to drag her away, Ryu steps in, placing himself between them. He demands to know why the mother refuses to respect her daughter's wishes or offer her genuine support. The mother dismisses him as the cook she has heard about, insisting that her methods ensure Himari is worthy of her station as a lady of the Natsuki family. She insults Ryu, calling him a shallow-minded commoner who cannot possibly provide a better environment than she can. Undeterred, he counters that Himari likely left home precisely because that perfect environment was too stressful for her. The mother is left stunned and offended by his boldness. Ryu argues that regardless of external resources, an environment cannot be considered good if it causes the athlete physical or mental discomfort. Unimpressed by what she calls his commoner logic, Himari's mother proposes a high-stakes wager. She challenges Ryu to a cooking duel against her family's first-class chef to prove that his care is superior. The terms are set. If Ryu wins, Himari can stay at the dorm. If he loses, she must return home immediately. Himari attempts to stop the arrangement, but Ryu accepts the challenge without hesitation. The mother smirks, instructing Himari to bring him to their estate this weekend before leaving the dorm. Once her mother is gone, Himari explodes at Ryu, calling him an idiot for picking a fight he cannot possibly win against a professional chef. Ryu retorts that he only intervened because she refused to stand up for herself. Himari eventually softens, admitting that while he had no business getting involved, she is grateful he defended her. Meanwhile, Kanzaki, Kaoru, and Yuzuki watch from the shadows, realizing that their cook has just stepped into a serious challenge. The girls emerge from hiding, confessing that they overheard the entire confrontation. Himari is mortified, protesting that they shouldn't have eavesdropped, but Ryu dismisses her complaints, noting that privacy is difficult to come by in a dorm. With her secret exposed, Himari opens up about her past. She explains that her parents forced her to learn ballet, violin, and etiquette solely to boost the prestige of the Natsuki name. Tennis was the one passion she chose for herself, but as she improved, her parents hijacked that too. They forced her to switch to better coaches and schools against her will, treating her sport as another status symbol for high society. Feeling like her tennis was being taken from her, she ran away to the dorms, an act she saw as necessary to reclaim her own life. Kaoru immediately hugs Himari, crying that she doesn't want her to leave. Yuzuki coldly suggests that Himari simply ignore her parents, reasoning that they are just other people in the end. Kanzaki counters that it isn't that simple. Adults hold the power, and Himari is still a minor fighting a losing battle. The room falls into a heavy silence until Ryu stands up, breaking the tension. He realizes the burden rests entirely on him. To save Himari, he must create a meal that forces her mother to acknowledge his skill. Himari admires his nerve, but warns him that the fight is unfair, explaining that her mother is the type of person who ruthlessly crushes the pride of anyone who defies her. Undeterred, Ryu shouts that they will never know the outcome unless they try. Himari insists that the solution is simple. She merely needs to improve her tennis scores to force her parents to accept her choices. Kanzaki and Yuzuki are skeptical, arguing that it is impossible to improve quickly under such immense mental stress. Ryu interjects, reminding everyone that he was the one challenged. If he can prove his support is adequate, the problem is resolved. Himari furiously tries to push him away, shouting that a high schooler has no chance against a first-class chef and that she is trying to protect him from her family's drama. Ryu accuses her of running away just like she did with her parents, and the two get into a heated argument. The other girls watch nervously, worrying that the pair is completely out of sync. The next day at practice, Himari plays with overwhelming power, using the pressure to suppress her usual inconsistency. Although the coach warns her to focus on stability over momentum, Himari believes this high-stakes environment is exactly what she needs to get stronger. During a break, she briefly thinks she senses Ryu watching her, but dismisses it as her imagination. Back at the dorm, Ryu frantically worries about the details of the cooking match, realizing he doesn't know the judges, the location, or the available ingredients. A commotion outside interrupts his thoughts. He investigates and finds a young man surrounded by curious students, politely asking to see the chef. Ryu intervenes and brings the visitor inside. The stranger expresses surprise that the head of the kitchen is a high school student, prompting Ryu to bluntly ask for his identity. The visitor reveals himself as Yuki, the Natsuki family's personal chef, and Ryu's opponent for the upcoming duel. He boasts about his top-level training in Paris and Copenhagen and says he has shaped Himari's body through his cooking since she was a child. Yuki looks down on the fact that she is eating food made by someone he considers a nobody, which makes Ryu feel uneasy. He then explains the rules of the match: a 3-course meal with an appetizer, a main dish, and a dessert. Before leaving, he leaves a food package for Himari and jokingly says that the taste of home might make her want to go back to her family. The moment Yuki is gone, Ryu ignores the promise to not eat the food and opens the package for enemy inspection. He samples the chilled pasta with shrimp and tomatoes and is devastated by its overwhelming deliciousness. The depth of flavor in the carrot salad, steamed chicken, and roast beef proves that Yuki pays perfect attention to every ingredient. Ryu's confidence shatters as he realizes he cannot compete with this level of luxury, causing him to wonder if Himari truly would be better off at home. He is also puzzled to find a sugary parfait included in the box, noting that Himari is supposed to be cutting back on sweets. Later, Himari talks with Kaoru and Kanzaki about her tennis progress. Because Kanzaki looks different without her usual blonde wig, Himari briefly fails to recognize her before realizing it's the judoka. Himari confidently claims that her tennis practice is going well, noting that she has been polishing her power game. She believes that if she maintains this momentum, she will finally get her mother off her back. However, moments later, she collapses from exhaustion, highlighting just how dangerously overworked she has been. Panic erupts as the group checks on her. Yuzuki immediately takes charge, announcing that she will fetch the school nurse. She instructs the others to help Himari sit safely to prevent injury. As they tend to their friend, the group realizes she has been pushing herself far too hard, leaving them with a bad feeling that the situation is spiraling out of control. In the infirmary, the school nurse treats Himari, relieved that her collapse wasn't serious. She warns the tennis player that she has overworked herself and strictly orders her to rest. Himari smiles politely, but once the nurse leaves, she falls into a gloomy silence. Ryu enters the room to check on her, but Himari immediately snaps at him. She accuses him of coming to laugh at her pathetic state, feeling humiliated that she collapsed after making such bold declarations about her independence. She demands that he leave her alone. Ryu denies her accusation, reminding her that he also made a bold declaration to her mother. He hands her a box of food. Upon seeing the contents, Himari recognizes the plating style immediately. It looks exactly like the dishes served at her family's estate. She realizes that her family's personal chef, Yuki, has visited the dorm. Ryu admits that meeting the professional chef shook his confidence. He confesses that while he loves cooking for the dorm, his skills may not be enough to compete with those of a high-class professional. He explains that as someone who grew up poor, he viewed restaurant chefs as performers, but he now doubts if a nobody like him can replicate that level of luxury. She stays silent, but notices the fresh bandages on Ryu's fingers, revealing how hard he has been practicing to beat Yuki. Unable to bear the guilt of him sacrificing so much for her, she interrupts him. She tells him to stop trying so hard for her sake and announces her decision. She is going back to her parents' house. Ryu immediately protests her decision, but Himari insists that it is better for her to endure her parents' control than to drag everyone else into her mess. She simply wants to put an end to the trouble. Ryu pauses, questioning his own motives. He realizes that he arrogantly thought he was saving her, when in reality, he started this competition by sticking his nose where it didn't belong. He admits to Himari that his reasons are actually selfish. He is picking a fight with her parents and the chef simply because he doesn't want her to leave the dorm. Himari is stunned by his words. Blushing furiously, she completely misunderstands his intent, thinking he is confessing his love or hitting on her at a completely inappropriate time. She flusteredly tells him to stop being absurd. Confused by her reaction, Ryu clarifies his point. He explains that she is his benefactor. Despite their vastly different backgrounds and his lack of a track record, she was the one who understood his determination and allowed a guy to live in the girls' dorm. He argues that he has no right to call himself a great cook if he can't even make his benefactor happy. Furthermore, having watched her practice up close, he refuses to forgive her parents for judging her solely on results without seeing her effort. He declares that this battle is for his sake, too. Hearing this, Himari smiles, amused by his brutal honesty. She calls him incredibly selfish and decides to follow his example. She admits that she wants to stay in the dorm because the stimulating environment allows her to keep loving tennis. With renewed resolve, she demands that he help her stay. Ryu grins, teasing her for sounding so high and mighty even when asking for a favor, but he confidently accepts the challenge. Himari smiles, and Ryu promises to do everything he can to support her, not worrying about being outmatched by the professional chef. Himari agrees to help him fully, sharing all her personal and tennis information so he can study her nutrition. Ryu senses her determination and promises not to hold back either. However, the situation immediately spirals into a misunderstanding at his odd request. Completely misinterpreting his intentions, Himari refuses. The other girls rush into the room upon hearing the commotion, and Himari accuses Ryu. Moments later, Ryu finds himself tied to a chair in a dark interrogation room within the dorm. Kanzaki steps forward, stating that even an attempted crime makes him guilty. From the sidelines, Kaoru comments that Kanzaki's outfit looks suspiciously like something from a dungeon and urges her to stop the roleplay. Ryu frantically explains that he only meant for Himari to change into gym clothes for a physical fitness test. He insists that he needs to determine the cause of her stamina issues immediately, since the deadline with her mother is only a week away. He apologizes for his poor choice of words. Himari forgives him and agrees to the test, but she insists that everyone else helps out to prevent any more misunderstandings. Later at the gym, Kaoru plays around with a 15-kilogram weight until Himari scolds her to take the test seriously. Kanzaki and Yuzuki step up, ready to help Ryu put Himari through a rigorous evaluation. Himari is puzzled when the other girls change into workout gear, but Kanzaki explains that she will handle the physical testing so Ryu can focus on taking notes. Ryu observes the athletes working together, appreciating their camaraderie. The results, however, present a confusing anomaly. Kanzaki reports that Himari's physical abilities, including side jumps, shuttle runs, and upper body strength, have all improved significantly. Physically, she is in peak condition. Her muscles are developing perfectly. Ryu questions why her match results are still suffering despite her body being at its best. Himari explains that her playstyle is that of an aggressive baseliner relying on power, but recently she has been prone to mistakes and form breakdowns that make her predictable. She had assumed these lapses were due to a lack of stamina or concentration, but the fitness tests disprove that theory. Ryu shifts the investigation to her diet. Himari details her strict routine. She eats mostly steamed vegetables and poached eggs, avoids fats, and limits her total intake to under 800 kilocalories per day. She also stops eating 1 to 2 hours before working out and documents her meals on Instagram so Ryu can review them. Kanzaki scoffs at Himari's use of Instagram, seeing it as a tool for showing off, but Himari insists it is for keeping an accurate record of her daily life and diet. Ryu decides the only way to find the missing piece is to watch her play the next day. The following day, Ryu heads to the tennis courts, admitting to himself that he knows almost nothing about the sport beyond vague terms like love. He arrives to find a chaotic scene. Himari is screaming and crying in frustration in front of her coach. She shouts that she hates her current state, citing dropping shot power, inconsistent form, and a ranking at risk. The coach sternly tells her to cool down, warning that while her passion is admirable, her habit of throwing fits over mistakes, a trademark of hers since childhood, will prevent her from reaching the top. Ryu introduces himself to the coach, who explains that Himari's issue is mental. The coach believes in slow growth, wanting to nurture her talent carefully over time through experience and consistency. But Ryu realizes this approach is fatal for their current situation. With the deadline only days away, slow growth could mean Himari being forced back to her parents' house, where she might lose her motivation entirely. He needs a solution that delivers immediate results. Ryu doubles down on his research, preparing dishes aimed at improving arm strength, mental focus, and stamina. Finally, the night before the promised duel arrives. The tension is palpable as Himari and Ryu face the deadline, questioning whether anything has truly changed over the past week. That night, Himari admits that her tennis hasn't drastically improved. However, she tells Ryu that one thing has changed: the way she sees him. She asks to post a picture of the two of them on Instagram before heading to bed, leaving Ryu alone with his frustration. He feels inadequate, thinking his current menu is merely a quick fix rather than a true solution for her inconsistent performance. Desperate for insight, Ryu scrolls through Himari's Instagram, analyzing her dietary history. He studies photos of the meals prepared by Yuki, the family chef, marveling at the technique and presentation. Then he remembers the parfait Yuki gave them earlier and takes a bite, stunned to discover that what appeared to be a strawberry is actually a meticulously crafted jelly. This sparks a realization. Yuki's cooking philosophy involves processing every single ingredient. The chef never serves Himari anything in its natural, difficult state. Everything is refined, softened, and made easy to consume. Ryu finally understands what her body has been missing. Seeing the notification that Himari posted their selfie gives him a surge of motivation, and he vows to create a meal that truly supports her. The next day, Ryu and Himari arrive at the massive Natsuki estate. Himari's mother meets them at the door, wasting no time on pleasantries, and immediately orders Ryu to begin the duel. Himari tries to ease Ryu's nerves as she welcomes him into the Natsuki estate, leading him on a tour of the massive Western-style mansion. Ryu is stunned by the opulence, learning that the house features an indoor pool and is even used as a filming location for popular dramas. The realization of the vast wealth gap hits him hard, but he silently vows to figure out a way to support Himari, regardless of their different backgrounds. In the main hall, Himari's mother declares that preparations are complete and explains the rules of the duel. Ryu and Yuki are to prepare 3 dishes based on the theme of supporting Himari's tennis, using any ingredients they like. The judgment will be made by a majority vote between Himari, her mother, and the 3 maids. Ryu notes the obvious disadvantage, as the maids are clearly biased toward Yuki, but he accepts the conditions without complaint. The match begins with Himari cheering Ryu on, while he focuses on a risky plan he hopes will impress her mother. Once the cooking is finished, Yuki takes the lead and presents his appetizer first. He serves a micuit of striped jack, explaining that it balances protein and vitamin B complex and includes Himari's favorite citrus flavors with a shallot sauce. The technical skill is so impressive that even Ryu is amazed. Himari and the maids taste Yuki's first dish, clearly delighted. Encouraged by their reaction, Yuki immediately serves his second course. Chicken from Iwaki Prefecture, sautéed with aromatic vegetables using very little oil and wrapped in a thin, translucent apple sheet. He explains that this dish represents a memory he will never forget. Himari, at 7 years old, wrapped in a sheet, asking him to promise that he would be her family chef forever. Yuki treats that childhood moment as a serious vow. He dramatically declares that now that she is in high school, he renews his promise to serve her faithfully, in sickness and in health, for as long as he is able. Himari snaps at him, shouting that he should stop treating her like a child, insisting she has changed since then. Despite her annoyance, she takes a bite and is amazed by the flavor. Even her mother admits the nutritional balance is perfect. Yuki hints that the winner of the contest is almost decided. Ryu feels the pressure, realizing that Yuki's ability to create stunning French cuisine while maintaining strict nutrition is on another level. But he steels himself, knowing that winning is his only option with the plan he has in mind. He serves his first dish, a ring-molded stack of tuna, avocado, and shrimp paste, designed to provide protein and vitamin B6. Himari's mother comments that the presentation is not bad, but after tasting it, she finds the flavor ordinary and forgettable, calling it a decent effort for a student with no real experience. Suddenly, the mother shouts in shock, exclaiming, "How hard!" The room freezes as the others ask if she is all right. She recovers, but angrily asks Ryu if he is ashamed of serving such a texture. Yuki observes the dish closely and realizes it is packed with nuts. Ryu remains calm, stating that he is not ashamed at all and would be delighted if they finished the whole thing. The mother agrees to continue, only because it is a competition, but she scoffs at what she deems an amateur mistake. As Himari takes a bite, she too feels a distinct crack in her mouth, surprised by the hidden texture. It is incredibly hard to chew. Although the flavor is excellent, the act of eating it is physically exhausting. Internally, Himari panics, wondering if he made a rookie mistake due to pressure, or if he is intentionally sabotaging the match. Ryu speaks up to defend his creation, explaining that the dish is a representation of Himari herself. He describes her as a natural leader in the dormitory, a place without hierarchy, who is admired for her strength, straightforward honesty, and ability to firmly state her opinions. He recounts how she initially opposed his presence in the dorm, but became a trustworthy ally once they understood each other. He asserts that the dish's strong core reflects that she is far more independent and reliable than her family gives her credit for. Yuki smiles and asks if Ryu hopes that a grand speech will make up for his preparation mistakes. Yuki gives a professional critique. He says that while adding nuts for texture is fine, they should have been crushed or sprinkled so the dish felt more unified. He explains to Ryu that the taste of ease, making food easy and enjoyable to eat, is the foundation of professional cooking. Comparing his own gentle, low-temperature style to Ryu's dish, Yuki says that using whole, hard nuts created noise that ruins the experience. The maids struggle with Ryu's appetizer, complaining that chewing the nuts makes it hard to enjoy the flavor. Yuki takes this as an opportunity to make a deeper point. Eating someone else's food requires trust, and the chef must respect the diner by making the food easy to eat. He accuses Ryu of lacking care and respect for the eater, saying that someone who doesn't prioritize the diner has no right to cook for Himari. Himari's mother smirks, agreeing with Yuki. She says this shows the difference between a first-class person and an ordinary person like Ryu. She stops Himari from speaking and even offers Ryu a chance to forfeit the competition to save everyone time. Ryu ignores both the insults and the offer to quit. Calmly, he asks the butler to bring the next course. The mother calls him a stubborn child, but allows the service to continue. When Ryu's main dish is placed on the table, everyone reacts in shock. Yuki looks incredulous, asking if Ryu is even taking the match seriously, pointing out that the dish is once again obviously flawed. Ryu stays calm and simply tells them to eat the main dish and warns them not to leave a single bite. The maids stare at the main dish in confusion. The diced steak is cut into absurdly large blocks, far too big for a refined meal, yet there are no knives on the table. Ryu issues a shocking command. There are no knives, because they are required to eat each block in a single bite. Yuki explodes with outrage, shouting at Ryu for daring to treat the young lady with such lack of etiquette. Ryu shuts him down, asserting that he is in charge during his turn and ordering them to finish every bite. Himari breaks the tense silence, accepting the challenge. She forces a large chunk of meat into her mouth, initially thinking it is too big and hard to manage. However, as she chews, she realizes that the more she works her jaw, the more savory juices flow out, making it surprisingly delicious. The maids follow suit, agreeing that while it is tasty, it is incredibly exhausting to eat. Yuki watches in horror, analyzing the technical failures of the dish. He notes that Ryu used shoulder roast and thigh cuts, naturally tough meats, and prepared them without removing the sinew or cutting against the muscle grain. To Yuki, taking fine ingredients and making them difficult to chew is an insult to the art of cooking and the ingredients themselves. When Yuki tries to voice his objection, Ryu cuts him off, shouting at the judges to hurry up and stop holding up the line. Himari complains that her jaw is completely exhausted, but Ryu just smiles, seemingly pleased by this specific complaint. Seeing that they have managed to finish the grueling meat course, Ryu announces that it is time for the final dish. Ryu presents his final course, a dried fruit pie. Himari's mother admits that it doesn't look half bad. Ryu explains the logic behind the dish. The fructose in the dried fruit serves as an essential energy source, while the cheese provides an extra protein boost, creating the ultimate golden result for a post-workout recovery meal. Himari takes a bite and is immediately hit by a burst of delicious flavor, but she encounters the same problem as before. The dried fruit is incredibly sticky and difficult to chew. She complains, asking if he couldn't have made it easier to eat. Yuki prepares to present his third dish, but he realizes he has a major problem. The judges can't eat anymore. The maids complain that the dried fruit was so dense and required so much chewing that they are physically exhausted and full. They refuse to take another bite. Himari's mother declares that the match is effectively decided since they cannot even taste Yuki's dessert due to Ryu's failure. Desperate and furious, Himari sprints toward Ryu and grabs him by the collar, screaming at him for throwing the match with such difficult-to-eat food. Yuki piles on, critiquing Ryu for having the skills of an amateur who shows no consideration for the diner's comfort. Himari pushes Ryu away, telling him to leave, but Ryu grabs her hand. He pulls her close and whispers, "The real show starts now," followed by a secret explanation. Himari's expression shifts as she finally understands his strategy. However, her mother interrupts, ordering Ryu to be thrown out and declaring him the loser, forbidding him from ever contacting Himari again. Back at the dorm cafeteria, a week has passed since the cooking showdown. Ryu serves a high-protein meal of fish and rice in savory dashi broth, an easy-to-digest udon noodle set, and French toast for energy. Despite the delicious food, the atmosphere is heavy. Kanzaki, Yuzuki, and Kaoru discuss the aftermath of the duel. Immediately after that night, movers arrived and hauled away all the furniture from Himari's room. Since then, Himari hasn't come to school once, and rumors suggest she is being homeschooled. Kaoru notes that Himari hasn't even updated her social media, leading them to worry she is being forced into a grueling training regimen. When they try to press Ryu for answers, he remains tight-lipped, simply stating, "I cannot tell you guys anything," while the mood remains grim. Yuzuki fears this silence confirms that Ryu lost the match. At school, the gossip mill is turning. Yuzuki and Kaoru overhear students discussing Himari's absence. The rumors are surprising. Apparently, Himari is balancing both tennis and studies at her family home, and her tennis game has improved drastically. One student suggests she is being hidden away to keep pests away. Yuzuki refuses to believe the rumors. She is convinced that Himari cannot be better off in that suffocating family environment and belongs at the dorm. Frustrated, she confronts Ryu in the kitchen again, demanding to know why he broke his promise to bring Himari back. Ryu remains silent, telling her only, "There is nothing he can tell you right now." Yuzuki refuses to move until he speaks, but he stubbornly refuses to crack. That night, Kanzaki and Kaoru are drinking in their room, missing their friend. Yuzuki arrives late, explaining her failed attempt to get answers from Ryu. Kanzaki tries to be rational, suggesting that if Himari and her family reached an agreement, they should move on. However, Yuzuki breaks down, refusing to accept the situation without proper closure from Himari and Ryu. Seeing her distress, the other girls admit they hate the unresolved feeling too. Kanzaki proposes a plan. Himari is scheduled to play in a tennis match next week. They decide to go and ask her directly about her feelings. The following week, the trio arrives at the crowded tennis venue. When they finally spot Himari on the court, they are stunned. She looks incredible, playing with power, precision, and genuine happiness. As she scores a point, she raises her hand in triumph. Seeing Himari in such great shape, Yuzuki feels a wave of defeat. She realizes that perhaps her family home really was the best place for her and that the dorm residents have lost. Kaoru begins to sob, believing their friendship is over. Suddenly, a loud familiar voice cuts through the crowd, cheering fanatically for Himari. The girls turn to see Ryu standing there, acting like a superfan. They rush him, shouting questions. Ryu nervously asks them to keep their voices down. He finally breaks his silence, explaining that he couldn't say anything before because he has his reasons. He has to make sure that Natsuki's parents don't find out what happened, and everything he does is done with the utmost care. Just then, Yuki, the Natsuki family chef, approaches them. He looks at Ryu with a mix of frustration and respect, admitting that he had been outmaneuvered the whole time. Despite his irritation, he recognizes that in this cooking showdown, he lost.